and welcome to the Powerfish Podcast. I'm Ben.
And I'm Fish. Today, we are going to talk about the theories of time. Is time something that flows like a river, or is that just an illusion? Is the past, present, and future a fixed landscape that we move through? We're going to get to all of that. But first, I have a very interesting story to tell you.
I've been wanting to hear this. You hyped this up.
I want to specifically say, when I told you about this, I told you that it would be a crime not to talk about it.
Yeah,
and let me dive into that claim for a second, because I very specifically said that.
Let's get into why it's a crime.
It's a crime because it overturns everything we've been talking about. Okay. We talk a lot about religion on this here podcast. We talk a mean talk about how it's not real.
Yeah.
Right. God is not up in the sky governing the creation. Jesus didn't rise from the dead. Right. But I met a prophet.
Oh, we were wrong. You met a prophet.
I met a prophet.
Okay.
And not just any
So
prophet.
Muhammad was wrong. He said he was the last one.
Yep. Well, interesting you say that, because we'll get to it. So
okay.
let me set the stage here. Let me tell you as it's happening. Ready? So I, for those of you who don't know, I work in the furniture industry. So I'm at work around the furniture, right? And a man walks up to me. Right, I'm going to give you a spoiler. It's the prophet.
Okay.
So,
the prophet approaches you.
The prophet approaches me.
You've been approached by the prophet. Okay.
Right. Okay.
In the furniture store.
And he says to me, and then again, I brought up that I work in the furniture industry because it makes sense in the context. He says to me, you know those kinds of tables that look like you cut a tree in half? And I said, yeah, it's called Nature's Edge. It's a really cool style. He's like, that's a really cool style. And he goes to shake my hand, and I shake his hand, and he says, hi, I'm Eli. And
Eli.
I said,
I
said, nice to meet you, Eli. And he said, yeah, like from the Bible.
Oh, Elijah.
And I said, yeah, Eli from the Bible. Okay, I know that's a biblical name.
Yeah.
And he says, no. He says, I am Eli from the Bible.
Okay.
Yep.
Really? Tell me, what does Elijah look like?
Well, he doesn't look like, if you, what I'm curious actually. If I
guess, what if we caricatured the Eli of the Bible to look like ourselves?
Eli Bible.
Because is he like one of those guys that kind of everyone's painted to look like in back in the day, where they've got some like whitish gray robes, and sounds like I'm describing Jesus, but I swear to God, everybody that
Is Eli and Elijah the same person?
aren't they?
It says Eli, biblical figure.
Well, there's also a biblical Elijah.
Right. Yeah, I do know that.
Well, that's
I actually don't know.
if there's a biblical Eli as well. I don't know about him.
Eli was a priest of Shiloh, the second to last Israelite judge. I don't know. That doesn't help me. I don't know the distinction there.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I don't know.
whatever that guy is,
whatever you just named off is, well, he literally said Eli, right? Not Elijah.
Yeah, he's at Eli
So
specifically.
so maybe this is the guy he's talking about, an obscure nobody from the Bible.
Here, let me send you what we think Eli looks like.
Yeah,
our character? And we'll throw it up on screen. That's what we think Eli, the prophet Eli, or whatever. I don't even know if this guy's a prophet, but who knows? That's what we think that guy looks like. That's not the guy I met. I don't know.
That's not what he looks like?
This guy was, I don't know, maybe in his mid to late 30s and kind of short. I don't know.
Not like 2030?
No, not like that. But yeah, so this guy comes up to me and he says, "No, I'm Eli from the Bible." And I don't know what to do in this situation. What do you say?
Well, you're at this point you realize, oh, I'm talking to someone with a mental health problem.
So I'm just kind of like, oh, like, okay. Yeah, dude.
Sick.
And here's what he tells me. I wrote this down. I tried to, as soon as he left my presence, I started writing down the conversation because I knew I was going to talk about this.
That is, I don't know if he would appreciate that, or maybe he would, because
he would.
He's been documented already, apparently.
Yeah. And he wants people to know who he is, and he tells me.
Sure, yeah.
So he tells me, this is what he tells me. He tells me that a cop was the first person he ever revealed himself to as Eli. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
So he says that. He says, yeah, a cop, dude, a cop was the first person I told about who I am. And I'm like, okay. And then he says this.
He started with a cop.
Yeah, he started with a cop.
with somebody that could, like, not diagnose, but certainly do something about this guy's obvious issue.
Yeah.
That's an interesting start.
And then the interesting start continues, because this is what he says to me. And I'm gonna tell you what he said to me, and I'm not putting words in. So just
this is verbatim.
This is verbatim.
That's okay.
Okay.
All right.
He says that since then, he likes to lure the police to his house to show them who he is.
Lure.
He said the word lure. I didn't make that up. He said lure.
Lure the police to his house to show them what is. There's so many questions to ask about that, but I guess I'm going to start with what would he show that proves who he is?
I don't remember exactly what he said. He was kind of bouncing all over the place in this part of the conversation. But what I gathered was there's something to do with a knife. There's something to do with a knife, and he does something without having to touch the knife. Something happens with the knife that doesn't require him to touch it, but something happens.
Hey, cop, you want to come to my house and see me do a thing with a knife?
That's what he said to me. He said,
that's a threat.
He said something about the knife, and that something happens, and he doesn't need to do anything because of the power within him.
Oh, but he can only do that at his house, interestingly.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. But apparently it needs to be at his house with police around that were lured.
And with a knife.
And
of all things.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Wow.
And then the last thing he said to me.
You didn't, before stopping you there right now.
Okay.
Stopped. Did he actually successfully get any cops to his house is the question.
He said according to him, which he's a biblical figure, so he could be trustworthy.
Yeah, of course.
But he said that it happens. And he said to me, he gave a recount of one of the times about how he lured the cop to his house, and then the cop was kind of just like, come on, man, like, no, like, you're not Eli, right? This is what he's telling me. You're not Eli. And then the guy does the thing. I don't know what the thing is. And then the guy left being like, he said specifically, he just bowed his head at me. Is what he said.
Yeah, that's not a made up story.
That's not a made up story at all.
You can trust that. Wow.
And then the last thing he told me was that the last time he went to heaven, because he's been to heaven. Let's not just gloss over that fact. He's been to heaven, right? And then this most recent time he talked to God, because he does that.
Okay.
Right? And God said that Donald Trump is his son, is the son of God.
Wow. That's wild. It's funny how I was going to... It's funny that the Christian insane person naturally is, well, I guess you would have to say a follower of Trump then, wouldn't you?
I mean, if he's the son of God, I mean, what are you going to do?
Well,
follow him?
God's second son.
Yes, yeah, other than Jesus himself.
Wow. And then he left.
And then I'm trying to disengage the conversation here, because I don't know what this guy's going to do. So I'm just like, like, hey, can I like help you? Like, what do you need help with something? And he's just like, nah, I'm just out and about.
What, you didn't happen to see what Eli from the Bible drove, did you?
No.
Oh man, I bet that would have been. It probably would have been something less than $500.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I could tell you that he had some pupil dilation going on, and some crazy eyeballs going on.
So yeah, you definitely were talking to a man that was under the influence of something, and perhaps not mentally okay.
Yeah, or potentially I was talking to a biblical prophet.
Yeah, or that. Hey, dude, I mean, not only, Muhammad, whether he was a prophet or not, Donald Trump is. So
yeah,
Muhammad, I'm sorry, Muslims, but proven wrong.
Yeah. You have been stopped.
Either way, you've been stopped. Time to go on to, whatever he believes.
Yeah, whatever.
That's crazy. I've never, dude, I wish I wish I would find myself in a situation like one of those.
See,
Kind of,
I would say
'cause there is also the situation. There's also the threat of danger in a
yeah.
situation like that. But depending on where you're at, but I've wanted to find myself in something like
I mean,
that.
I'll tell you, I was uncomfortable. I'll tell you what, being there, I was like, how do I stop this from continuing?
Yeah,
But
I don't know. I don't know if I would have taken the how do I get away from this? Maybe if I was at my job, I would have been like that. But I feel like I'd try to probe because that's too
I
good.
was
That's
very
too good.
interested and I wanted to know more, but at the same time, I was just like, this guy seems like he would do something. He does. He has a magic knife. Let's
He
not
has a
forget that.
magic knife
He has
that
a
he has
magic
shown.
knife.
He has gotten cops to bow, in fact. So maybe probing is not the right thing to do. But I mean, I don't know. If he's a man of God, what do you have to fear, really? Other than
But fear
slaughter and
itself.
genocide. But
Yeah, exactly.
well, that's interesting. It makes you wonder if Eli is even his real name. Like,
I don't think so.
you don't
I
think
don't. I
so?
think he. No, he. Oh, he. I don't remember what his name was, but he. Not that I would air it publicly anyway. But he told me what his name was.
And it
That was
wasn't.
his. That was his birth name. Yeah, and it was not Eli.
Interesting. So he knows that. So he did sort of like a, not so much a transgender move, but a transhuman move.
Some would call
A
that
trans person.
Someone would call that reincarnation. Someone would call that.
Yeah, I guess.
A past spirit awakens and it's like transgenderism, but like transhumanism.
But not transitioning gender, but trans person.
Yeah, no,
Trans-
that's a thing. That's a
transhumanism.
thing in what religion is that? I can't remember.
Well, there are some. I mean, Buddhism is a large grouping, most of which I believe are atheist religions, but there are some that subscribe to reincarnation.
Granted,
Some
most like
slices, whatever.
reincarnation claims, it's more like that person actually started life over, and not so much that they were another person and then awakened with the spirit of somebody else. I don't think that's how that works usually, but unless I'm wrong.
So this guy's situation, well, see, this is something I totally would have loved to probe. Was birth? He obviously had a birth name. Was he Eli from birth, or did Eli kind of insert himself into him?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't imagine how many people he tries to witness to that just brush him off. Imagine if he met somebody that just like really wanted to know. I bet that would just make his day. I don't know. That'd
That'd be me. I'd be
That'd
like,
be you.
what does God say? What does he look like? How do you get to heaven?
What does he say? I want to know.
Do you fly?
Do you fly? Can you do it right now?
Exactly. Can you go to heaven now? Can you talk to him now?
Can you take me with
Yeah,
you?
that would be. I would love to find myself in such a situation as that, because that'd be too much fun. Maybe that's cruel that we're making fun of somebody that either has a drug problem or has a mental problem or both. But
And that's the thing is I've talked to people about this and they kind of say the same thing. It's like, oh, you should make fun of that. I'm really not making fun of him. Honestly, I'm just baffled by the claim, I suppose. Like that's just a
I mean,
interesting
you
one.
can still empathize with a bad situation that somebody's in and sort of extract the enjoyment
Yeah.
out of it without demeaning it.
Yeah.
At least I would think you can. But
Well,
yeah, so lucky you or unlucky you, however you want to see
in
that.
the moment, unlucky me. But as soon as he walked away, I was like, man, that'd be fun to talk about on the podcast.
That's a good story. That's a really good story. I mean, I'm surprised, genuinely, actually. I'm kind of surprised we didn't encounter something like that. And I think we could have if we tried at all. But I'm surprised we didn't encounter something like that in Austin, because
Yeah.
most of the places you turn, you'll find some homeless people. And I guarantee that at least some of them are on who knows what drugs.
Right.
So, like, I would be not surprised if that happened in a city like that. But yeah, no, it didn't. Instead, it happened in the little old furniture store in the little old
Right.
town, 50, 40, whatever thousand population town,
40 or 50.
40, 50, something, somewhere in between there.
Right. Well, that's not what we're here to do today. Well, so we'll
Maybe one day.
We'll write that off. Checkmate atheists,
Yeah,
us included.
checkmate atheists, and honestly, most other religions. Checkmate.
Checkmate. I'm
Donald Trump is the son of God too.
the electric boogaloo.
Electric Boogaloo.
But we're going to talk about some theories of time, specifically A and B theory, or presentism and eternalism. So let's start with honestly the easy one, when that's presentism. And the reason it's easy, I mentioned in the intro, it flows like a river,
Right.
and that's because the only thing that is real is what is happening in the current moment. What do you see,
Right.
and what is around you is the only thing that's real, and that includes time. So the past,
present.
the past is happened and therefore non-existent in the current moment, and the future is yet to be written and therefore does not exist yet.
Right.
So that is what is, I would say, the normal experience of the.
Certainly. I mean, you can't find. That's not true. What I was just about to say.
Oh,
I'll say what I was just about to
tell
say.
me what you're about to say, because I
But-
want to hear some falseness.
Well, what I was about to say was, you ain't gonna find a person who doesn't experience or hasn't experienced time as what you just described, as a flowing nature, as
Yeah.
something that is unwritten ahead of us. The behind us can't be changed. But given enough drugs, some people can feel like they lose their sense of time, or even without drugs.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I've heard of some quite adept meditators that once you get into a certain state, once you get to a certain level of meditation, all sense of space and time just kind of flow away. There is only the feeling of consciousness and its contents, nothing more. So
That's intense.
That's intense. That's something I mean, I've never heard that from anybody with less than, I don't know, 10,000 hours of meditation.
Yeah.
So like, that's something that I could probably never hope to without a lot of drugs.
Yeah,
to
that's
assist.
That's some pro level stuff right there.
But your average Joe on the side of the street, if you ask him, like, what does time feel like to you? And they would probably give a description of, yeah, it kind of feels like it's flowing.
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, that's the experience that we feel. I mean, you can't go backwards in time, and without taking into account some quantum physics, you can't go forward in time. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But just the average Joe who doesn't know much about physics, you pull him on the side of the road, just like you said, and that's the experience. Time marches 1 second per second everywhere you are, and that's the end of it.
Right. And clocks. You look at a clock. Also, the average person, this is a part that is incorrect, but I would also say the average person would see one clock, and if you have two perfectly synchronized 100% accurate clocks, and I'll get into what 100% accurate even means.
Right.
in because these clocks are telling this abstraction of what we call time. But if there were two clocks that were 100% perfectly synchronized between each other, and then I move one clock to Mars and keep one clock here, they would also assume, yeah, those clocks are locked and loaded. They're done and dusted. They ain't moving. They're staying the same. When in fact, those clocks are now ticking at totally different rates.
That's crazy.
That's another intuition. But in regards, I mean, one of the criticisms I've seen of this presentism view, of the A theory view, is given that the only thing that can truly exist is the now, the present moment, the ever flowing and ever changing present now. Given that that's the only thing that exists, and the past doesn't, that kind of confuses the way we use language today. Because if you say, well, the past doesn't exist, then what are you saying when you refer to things in the past that existed? Like, let's say the Holocaust. If you find some dude that is some like Holocaust denier, and you are a subscriber of presentism, and he says, yeah, that happened in the past. It doesn't exist.
Right.
Like, well, and how do you, I guess, how would a presentist respond in a way that gives actual value to what did happen in the past? Because it doesn't feel like the past seems unchanging and can't be altered. But
Mm-hmm.
to us, it doesn't feel like it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
You know,
I saw an illustration of this. It was really interesting. It was about thinking about time. If you're a presentist, thinking about time as a as like a drawing, right? And somebody draws the pic, not anybody in particular, but the picture is drawn, right? And then that picture gets set aside. It's gone now, and then a new picture is drawn on top of it. And
yeah,
it's just the present moment is shifting, and it's not about a backlog. It's about the what is presently in front of you. That doesn't answer any question that you just posed. But it's I
right,
just think it's a helpful way of visualizing this, because you say, well, the present's the only thing that exists and the past doesn't exist, and people go, that doesn't make any sense, that's not intuitive.
right,
But you think about it in terms of a revolving moment. The
yeah,
moment marches and the past is non-existent, and it is in the sense of we can't access it.
yeah,
But
right.
it is, I mean, I would argue that it is real in the sense of that it happened, but has happened and accessible a sufficient relation to real.
Right. Is has happened but inaccessible justification to say non-existent, which is would be a presentist's view.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's
I don't know if
just
that linguistically tracks.
I don't know. I don't think it does. Right?
I mean, you could make the argument easily that the future doesn't exist
Right. And but
in
the
this
difference
in this
is we don't
framework.
remember the future.
Right.
That's the
You can't remember the future, you can only speculate.
exactly. So that's the difference with something about the past and the future equally being non-existent is the past was once the now. So it
It's
did
true.
exist. So, but just because the now, the past was once the sort of sweeping broom of the existent now, and it no longer, just because it no longer is, I don't think is a good reason to say that the past no longer exists.
Yeah.
Because even if you are to say it only exists as a figment of our imagination, basically. Because we've talked about last Thursdayism before on the iceberg thing, and the fact that we wouldn't actually really know if the entire universe was created last Thursday, because memories in brains are, you don't have to have actually experienced a thing
Right.
for that memory to be formed. Your brain can form whatever the hell memory it actually wants to form.
Right.
So in that sense, if let's say last Thursdayism is true, which is today, so so that the universe was created a week ago, and everything before that is truly made up memory, then you would say, well, yeah, then it really never did exist.
Mhm.
But if that's the case, how is that any different if we have memories of if we have fake memories of before last Thursday that
Mhm.
don't actually exist? How is that non-existent, but our memories of the past as we consider it now, where all of it does actually exist, how is that any different from what we just described as non-existent?
Right.
Let me
That's a
okay,
good
I
question
confused
there.
myself a little bit at the end there. Let me try and clarify this point more because I really think this is important. So last Thursdayism, let's say it's true. The universe was created last Thursday.
Mhm.
Or let's just say this morning. The universe
Yeah.
was created this morning, and all memories we have prior to this morning are the consequence of how our brain just happened to have formed,
Mhm.
right? And it's false memories, false, quote unquote, false memories. Would you then say what we believe, what our memories, the past that we remember before this morning, would you say that exists or did exist?
The past before this morning,
Exactly.
also known as yesterday.
Also known as yesterday.
I mean,
This is under the context of last Thursdayism is true.
I mean, I would maybe try to draw a distinction between exists and has existed.
Sure. Would you say it has existed?
Yeah, I would.
Even before, even yesterday. The only thing that actually happened was our memories of it. Because last Thursdayism is true. The universe was created this morning.
Oh, we're in the framework of last Thursday. Okay,
last Thursdayism is true. Right.
Oh, okay. So then at that point, then it wouldn't be true. It'd be a figment of your imagination.
Okay, so you think that would be... So it doesn't exist and never did.
Or it would be maybe not a figment of your imagination. It would be a
false memory.
A false memory across people, I guess.
A collective false.
A colossal. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. So, but for all we know, we can't assume this because then everything would go into turmoil. But for all we know, last Thursdayism is actually true. Yeah. But let's get rid of that frame. Now it's the real world where we believe the past did actually happen.
Yeah.
The consequences are exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And you just described as the past under last Thursdayism doesn't exist and never did exist.
Right.
So why is it now that we believe the past did actually exist? Are we to say it did actually exist?
Because of the creation of the universe.
Because of when we perceive to have actually we perceive these things to have actually been real.
Right. If we can establish that the creation of the universe happened before the formation of the earth, then everything that's happened on the earth is something that has existed, as opposed to not.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You look like you thought about that for a minute.
Yeah. Well, these are complex thoughts to think. So,
but do we look at this another way? I mean, are we saying that presentists think that the past truly never existed? Or
they would say that it doesn't exist in the now because only the now exists.
Right. Is that in a spatial sense? As in, the only thing that exists spatially is what is currently existing presently.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
well, I mean, and again, it gets down to semantics, but at that point, that checks out, I suppose. It's in the sense that, at least in the world of a presentist, the past isn't happening in front of me right now.
Sure.
The present is happening, and that's the only thing that exists. So, I mean, I suppose that makes a lot of sense. And that's why it's the most common view.
Right. I would say it's the most common view simply because that's just what it feels like.
Yeah.
For someone who's been born and goes through their life and dies, never having thought about the nature of time once, probably I'd be willing to bet that they were a presentist.
Yeah.
So to speak. So, yeah, that's presentism. And
that's the easy one.
That's the easy one.
And we still got tripped up on it a little bit.
Right. Mainly when it comes to the existence of the past. So, I guess, so then, let me, just to hold on to this a little bit. Just a little bit further. So, then let's say we bring this Holocaust denier back, and they say they want to just I don't know, do it again. And
the Holocaust?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a weird thing for a Holocaust denier to do, is want to do the Holocaust.
Oh. So I guess I would say they want to do it a first time.
Okay.
Well, they use the notion that let's say they're a strict presentist and don't believe that the past exists.
Yeah.
Maybe it did exist at one point when it was the now.
Right.
But it doesn't anymore.
Right.
Are they unjustified in saying that the Holocaust in a way doesn't exist?
Yeah. They would be, because, well, they're not also. They are, and then they are not also at the same time. Again, it comes down to the words, right?
Is it purely semantics that is being
Yeah, it is
debated here?
because the Holocaust denier, granted, if they're making the claim that the Holocaust didn't happen because presentism, then they're stupid because that's not how that works.
Unless something like last Thursdayism is true.
I suppose. But then I mean, could you say something exists if it well no, it wouldn't. I was going to say could you say something doesn't exist strictly because it didn't spatially and literally happen even though it is embedded into the social consciousness. But I guess if in a literal real life sense, I suppose it didn't happen. But this I forgot where I was going with this. That really threw me for a loop actually. I was gonna make a claim about the Holocaust denier and their relation to words and presentism, and about how if they say it doesn't exist, yeah, that's right. They're correct in that it's not currently happening, but they're incorrect in a claim about the past, I would say.
So your response could be
Let's be clear. My response to them would be that they're just being stupid and
right.
inaccurate.
Okay, sure. But let's if for some reason both of you are under extreme philosophical drugs,
Yeah.
your response could be, well, because it used to be the now,
Yeah.
then that is just reason to not be a Holocaust denier, quote unquote.
Yeah. Because it used to be the present and therefore it happened. It did happen. It's just
But
not
when we say
happening.
it used to exist, what does that mean?
It used to be the present moment. It used to be in the current truth. And now it is the past truth. And I would argue that that's still truth. It's representative of the former present. But
Okay, I'm so, where I'm getting a little bit. I don't know if there's anything here, but where I'm kind of getting hung up on is using words like used
yeah.
and 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 past in general when the entire idea is that the past doesn't exist. And when we say something used to exist because it was the former now, which does exist,
Yeah.
and even using that word, the former, what do you actually mean by saying the former or used when you don't believe the past exists? Do you,
But
do you,
but but don't they believe that it exists? It exists in the sense that it's just not the current real present. That's kind of what my question was earlier. Would they actually make the claim that the past doesn't exist, or would they just say that the only thing that is truly tangible, real, is the present, and the past existed and and exists in a mental sense?
so the only way the past does exist is the imprint of its now that it left on our brains, which we call memory.
Right, would be memory exactly.
Hmm.
But again, I don't. Maybe this is a weak spot in my research. I don't have a sufficient answer for that.
Me neither.
I don't know if it's that they don't think is that it's not that I wonder if maybe they think the past is as non-existent as the future is non-existent, or do they make a distinction?
Is there anything truly different between the past and the future in their non-existence? I wonder under a
Yeah.
presentist view, and that I don't know.
I can tell you that that distinction is absolutely made with the common folk,
Oh,
definitely.
of course, of
but
course.
but and we're making the claim that presentism is the common claim of time, but is it by technicality their belief?
It's hard to know. It's hard to know.
It's hard to know without a good Google search.
Huh. I had something smart to say, but I forgot it.
Dude, we're on a roll today.
Dude, it's hard. This is a hard thing to keep the train
We-
in one direction on.
Okay, so last two times week ago, 2 weeks times
Two
ago.
times one week ago.
I was gonna say last week, and then I was just like,
I'm gonna refer to the past as a math equation.
last week times 2 ago, we talked about what we're gonna do for the next episode, and we brought up A theory and B theory of time because actually we talked about it before.
We have talked about it before on the existential.
Go check out that video on at.
We did not talk about
links.
A theory really, but we did talk about B theory a little bit.
Well, because B theory is going into this conversation, I thought B theory was the more interesting one, but we're having plenty of interesting conversation now.
A theory, I think both are equally quite interesting.
Yeah, so I had a point again that I was going to do with this. God dang it. Right, so we talked about what we're going to talk about, and we were just like, you know what? We had all these ideas, and we're like, no, we got to narrow it in. We got to narrow it
down.
We got to narrow it down, and then we were just like, oh yeah, A theory and B theory.
Because saying time in general, that's something a bit too vast.
Yeah, that's a bit broad, but we said A theory and B theory, we could probably tackle that. It's a big topic.
We could, I think, do independent research on just one or the other and make an episode on it.
Yeah.
These are such extensive theories of time. We haven't even begun. If you don't know what B theory or eternalism is, we haven't even begun to talk about how wild that one is yet.
Yeah.
So,
and that's again, like going into this, I thought the A theory was just going to be hey, this, yep,
time flows.
Time flows.
Feels like it, right? All right, moving on. But no,
Exactly.
A theory, it's the presentist view is very.
Let me just you speak some more, and I'm gonna type some more.
Yeah, well, let me get into some of the problems on the presentist view. First of all, one of which is the way we understand physics today. There is no universal present, right? If the present, the now is the only thing that exists, the problem is now is different at every single at every point in space. Like, if my now is not his now right now, my now is not his now my now.
Exactly.
But and ours is not anybody else's, because time flows based on one, how fast you're going relative to something else, and two, how bent space-time is around you by the mass around you.
Mm.
Both of those things affect time. And the faster you're going, or two, the more bent that space-time is by the more massive object it is, the slower time goes for you from an outside observer. For you, nothing changes. But from an outside observer, you will be quote unquote flowing in time slower.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa, the opposite is true for you looking at somebody else that is not moving when you are moving. Time for them appears to be going faster. But to each individual person, the way that they feel themselves, nothing changes, no matter what. That's why I mentioned the clocks thing. A clock here versus a clock at Mars, they will tick at different rates, even if they are perfectly in sync and tick at exactly the same rate. Even it doesn't even have to be between here and Mars. It can be between the floor and the ceiling, and they will tick at different rates because one is closer to a larger mass and one is not. Or you could keep them at the same plane, and you could have one as stationary and one you put in your pocket and then start walking. That one's now going to tick different than the one that's not in your pocket moving. So, like, now, the ever-present now, truly, in a literal sense, does not exist in a uniform way across space. It just doesn't. It can't. Now, there are some counters to that. There is a Christian philosopher, William Lane Craig, who is a presentist because
I watched some of an interview with him on presentism.
yeah,
It was
he is a
interesting.
presentist. He takes the view that there is a ultimate frame of reference, so to speak, a preferred or a true frame of reference. So what I mean by frame of reference is just my now is one frame of reference. Fisher's now is another frame of reference. Um, and everybody else's, and the point that light has its own frame of reference. And like I said, they all experience time at different rates. So each point in space is a different frame of reference. And William Lane Craig believes that there is a sort of ultimate, a true frame of reference that governs. I don't know if that's right, for want of a better term, governs the other frames of reference. So he believes there is an ultimate time sort of above this relativistic time,
Interesting.
which, and that's how he defends presentism. Now, my counter to that is you're just making stuff up.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, you're
Where's
just saying stuff to prove a point.
exactly where's the justification to all of a sudden insert this extra ultimate frame that exists somewhere, but who knows? So I don't think that's a valid argument against presentism. Um, but that is what he believes, and I believe a lot of other Christian philosophers also believe that there is a sort of ultimate frame of reference. But yeah, not me. So that's but another argument for presentism is that that's just what it freaking feels like. It feels like time's just kind of flowing.
So it walks like a duck.
It walks like a duck. It's like a duck in the water, just moving down with the stream. So, but we don't perceive, cultures perceive that flow a little bit differently sometimes. So how we see it is the past is behind us. Linguistically, we say behind, not literally behind, but linguistically, we say the past is behind us, the future is ahead of us. There are people that believe the future is something that comes up from behind them that they can't see, that sort of takes them by surprise. And the past is in front of them, flowing away, and they can see it. They know, which is kind of actually a better way to think about it.
I mean, that just kind of feels like the difference between outlooks on life, really.
Sort of, yeah.
Kind of, are you, how would you put that? The future, like you said, kind of sneaks up on you. You're unprepared. You're watching you're watching the past slip away, and you're falling into uncertainty.
Right.
As opposed to the old you is gone, and you are moving towards new horizons.
And I can take control of the future.
Yeah, that just seems like different viewpoints.
Right. Sort of. I think in our culture, probably anywhere in America, you're gonna think of, you're gonna find the past is behind us, the future is in front of us view.
Right.
But like I said, other parts of the world, they don't feel that, they don't perceive that flow in that same, semantic sense. But if we're talking literally speaking, like the future coming from where you can't see and the past flowing away from you where you can see makes more sense.
Right.
Just because you know the past and you don't know the future.
That does make more sense, actually. You can't face the you can't face the future.
If you could see
anticipate
exactly, if you could see behind you and look at the future coming at you, you'd see the future. But you can't do that. If the future was in front of you, you're looking in front of you.
Yeah.
Stupid. Where's the future? Where's it at?
Are you walking backwards?
Are you walking backwards? Where's that future that's in front of you? You blind? So it kind of makes it, that I think is a better view of how it flows in terms of accuracy's sake.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately it's meaningless other than what you just mentioned, the sort of outlook on um, your perceived philosophy on how life proceeds and age and stuff. But yeah, any
Well,
what's your
I was just about to say I have not found anything that really. I mean, I'm on Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. They're just going through different claims of presentists, and I haven't found anything specifically relating to the past. They do say, this says one claim is only present things have existed, exist now, or will exist. Oh no, that's different. That's something different. No. They're doing an interesting thing. They're representing false claims. I
oh
want to know real claims.
yeah, what are the real claims of someone who is and has thought quite extensively about presentism and its implications?
Yeah, and I'm just not finding a good answer for that. I did find one a second ago that basically just kind of said the best way to think about it is kind of what we were saying, how the past did exist, it just doesn't currently exist. But they made the claim that by the best way they mean the way that makes it sound the most reasonable, which I don't know if that means it's the correct way they view it. They're just saying the most reasonable way to feel about presentism is that the past actually existed, but it just doesn't exist now. But I didn't
Which I
find
would probably agree with. That
I
is
would
the
agree.
most reasonable,
I would agree that's reasonable. I would say it's unreasonable to say that the past doesn't exist at all because
or at least never did.
that's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
the past never existed in the sense that it might as well have not happened.
Right. Yeah. Which that I would see as an unreasonable thing, even though somebody making the claim X that happened. If they're talking about a thing that happened, necessarily it has to be in the past. So if X happened doesn't exist, maybe under the president's view they would be objectively correct, but sort of pretending that it didn't formally be the now seems unreasonable.
Right. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT because
Now, what does ChatGPT think about the past?
what do you think? Great question. Okay.
It always hits you with that one.
Great question. And no, it says great question, and the answer is nuanced.
Wow, what a surprise!
I'm so surprised at that. However, they don't usually say that the past never existed. Instead, the past did exist but no longer exists, and the future will exist but doesn't exist yet. So, kind of what we're talking about. I don't know if that's
Okay.
accurate, but
Future will exist.
in summary, did the past exist? Yes, but it no longer does. Another question. Does the past still exist? And then it says, no, only the present is real. So the past existed, but it no longer does. And the past does not still exist because the present is the only thing that's real.
So the only so what at least ChatGPT is saying that the standard presentist view is in fact that the only thing existing about the past is the imprint that it was formerly the present left on our minds. Yeah, on our brains in the form of memory. Okay. Interesting. And that seems the most reasonable that I would imagine any reasonable
I mean,
president to be.
if I didn't know anything about what we're about to talk about, then I would say that is absolutely true without really even having to think too hard about it.
Right. That of course. What else could there be? We'll get to that. But what else could there be? I mean,
Exactly.
right. So, well, you should have a good idea of what presentism is
Yeah.
at this point.
I feel enlightened.
Yeah, enlightened we've been. So, I'll dig into a little bit about the B theory now. This is the one that most physicists subscribe to, and under scrutiny, perhaps makes more sense,
Mm-hmm.
but is not at all intuitive. and not
This
how we feel it.
this is
So,
one of those things where no matter how true it is, you're gonna have to like fight people on it. You're gonna have to like pull them over.
exactly. This is something that no matter how much the data supports it, it's you're not going to just tell this to somebody and then have them accept it.
With we talked about this a little bit in the last time we talked about this, which was the last time we talked about this.
It doesn't exist anymore, though. Doesn't exist.
The only again, we haven't even presented what it is yet, but I guess
We're talking a big talk about this thing
I guess
we haven't said.
I guess I'll just man, this should have waited for a couple more minutes from now. But I'll tell you,
you're in it now.
I'll tell you what, the one group of people that I feel like could be really receptive to eternalism, spoiler, is certain religious groups. And we talked about that last time, if you recall.
Absolutely.
Because of the way divinity is structured.
Right.
But anyway, continue.
Exactly. So we'll come back to that because if you haven't seen the episode, it's you cannot have free will with me doing a stupid like that pose in the thumbnail on where me and Fish argued about free will and its relation to omnipotence and omniscience predominantly. But we'll get to that because we can summarize that relatively quickly.
Is that the episode?
Yeah, in it.
I thought we did it. Unless we did another one. What did you say it was called?
Free will cannot exist. I believe
there was another episode we did. I just looked at this earlier. It was called
You Do Not Have Free Will.
It was called Did the Future Already Happen?
Oh,
with me going like that.
That was
right before our Christianity is a Delusion episode. It was the one right before it.
You'll just listen to us talk a little bit about the things that don't exist anymore, but used to. That was when the commenter reconciled the B theory of time with omniscience and its compatibility with
which
free
is
will.
why we talked about divinity.
Which is why we talked exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So that's what that episode was. So the episode that I was talking about omniscience and its reconciliation with free will, and my argument against its possibility was what I mentioned: free will cannot exist. But we can summarize how it actually can exist under this B theory of time in a moment. But let's first describe what we've been talking about for 10 minutes now. The B theory of time, or otherwise known as eternalism. So this is the theory that the past still currently exists. The present obviously exists. And this is the big bit. The future exists just as much as all the other two. So past, present, future all exist equally. And the only thing that gives us this perceived flow is us, our brains, and our consciousness. And a little bit more, I'll explain this in a sec too, but in a little bit more detail, because of entropy and because we are entropic creatures. So the B theory of time, it's also known as the block theory or the block universe, where the description that Fisher was talking about earlier, where someone was painting a picture of the present and then sets it aside and then paints the next picture of the present and sets it aside. This is sort of, the pictures have all been painted and they just get stacked on each other. And you're just going up through the pictures. So the future is already there. It's already laid out. The past is still there. It hasn't gone anywhere. And you're just in one picture at a time. You're in one slice or one frame, so to speak. Or I think this is coming to mind, but I'm pretty sure you called it this in one of those previous videos, where if you got a slice of bread, the whole loaf is there, but you're only eating one slice at a time. You know?
If that was me that said that, I'm a genius.
I think it was you. Because
that's a great. I don't remember saying that because the past doesn't exist, but according
exactly,
to some
the past
people,
doesn't exist, so I can't remember what I said. Yeah, but no, yeah. So imagine it's a loaf of bread, loaf's whole there, but you're one slice at a time. So there are many questions that this poses. Let me get to what it solves. First of all, is under relativity and how I described how time actually works, where there is no such thing as the present in a in all encompassing sense. This solves that. It solves the problem of there is no all encompassing now because there doesn't the future it's already there. There doesn't need to be a now. You can be on whatever sheet of paper you want to be on, and somebody else is on a little bit different of a sheet of paper, and it doesn't matter because you're all still within the block, right? You're all still
Yeah.
within the current slice of time. So it makes sense under relativity. Also, why this theory is presented, because on a specifically, this is important, on a macroscopic scale, there is nothing in the laws of physics that says we can't predict what will happen in the future or retrodict what happened in the past. So, if you zoom in to an atom and anything larger than an atom, if you know its position and its velocity, you can determine with 100% accuracy where it's going to be or what it's going to do in the next moment. And if you take that next moment where its position and velocity is, you can determine where it's going to be and where it's going to be at in the next moment after that. And you can repeat that process indefinitely. Now, this is not a new concept. In I think it was the 18th century, there was Pierre Simon Laplace who coined Laplace's demon, where he said if there was this demon that knew the position and velocity of everything in the whole universe, they could know the ultimate future and the ultimate past of everything that did happen and everything that will happen. A better example of that in today's terms would be like a supercomputer or a super quantum computer or something unbelievable. We can't do that or even come close to that. And the reason why this can be applied to even human beings is because we are not made of anything different than these equations are are predicting. So it's like an atom or anything bigger, you can predict where it's going to be and what it's going to do next if you know its position and velocity. You're made of nothing more than that, right? Human beings. There's no reason to think that if a human being's atoms were all mapped, including our neurons, which one was going, which one got fired, whatnot. There's no reason to believe why we wouldn't know what's going to happen next in the next moment and in the next moment, and ad infinitum. So that's another sort of argument for eternalism.
Um, I'm probably misunderstanding this, but you said predicting the movement of atoms, and that brought into my mind a thing that I had read about, and that was Brownian motion.
Yep.
How does that work into that?
Um, Brownian motion is Einstein wrote a paper on it before his special relativity paper. Um, that was a thing that was discovered before, I believe, before atoms were really proved. I believe they were suspected to have existed. But Brownian motion is simply dust particles at a microscopic scale bouncing off of atoms.
Okay, so it's not the movement of the atoms themselves.
No,
Okay, gotcha.
no. That, but I also have read about that for research of this very thing. Yeah, Brownian motion. Basically, dude got a microscope, looked at things really close. Like I think it was a drop of water.
It was medium suspended in liquid. What
Yeah,
liquid was one of the mediums? Anyway.
right. And he noticed that shit's moving.
Yeah.
Why is it moving? And it's dust bouncing or molecules bouncing off of atoms.
Because, and the reason I brought that up is because I specifically heard some chatter when I was doing research for this about people talking about quantum randomness is what they were talking about.
That's why I specified at a macroscopic scale.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's why that was important. Because at a microscopic scale, once you get down to smaller than the atom, there is something called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which is randomness, but it's not randomness because we don't have the tools to be able to measure. So let's get a little bit more specific. You've got a photon, one unit of light,
Mhm.
right? That's smaller than an atom by a lot. So if you try to measure the position and the velocity of one photon, you can, before you measure it, you can't figure out where exactly it's gonna you can't figure out where exactly it's gonna be in its next moment. Because
Yeah.
if you determine its position, you cannot know its velocity. And the ever greater precision you get in determining its position, the ever growing randomness its velocity could be. The less you
Mhm.
can know, the less you can know about what its velocity is, and vice versa. If you measure its velocity to an ever greater precision, the ever greater less you can know about its position.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. And this is the part where I start to not really understand very much. But another part of that is, if you're measuring, if you're measuring a photon, before you measure it, there's a what's called a cloud of probability, where the more center of the cloud is the higher probability where it's going to be. And as you get further away, there's a lesser and lesser and lesser probability of finding this photon in this location.
Mhm.
And when we say in this location, these probability clouds are so incomprehensibly small.
Mhm.
So it's still a super, super small point. But the thing is, that probability is sort of intrinsic to physics. It's not that the photon's somewhere here. It's somewhere here, definitely. We just don't have the tools to be able to figure out where it is 100%. No, literally, it is intrinsically built into its nature that the randomness of where it's going to end up is fundamental.
Yeah.
Like, there is no, it doesn't exist until these, it exists somewhere in this probability cloud, but it doesn't exist in space until it is measured. And you
Right.
will find it in this cloud, and the probability of finding it in the middle is greater, or finding it further out is lesser, but it doesn't exist in these spots until it's measured. And that is
Mhm.
inbuilt, that is intrinsic. So that is, at the level of quantum mechanics, truly, as at the fundamental level, it is random. That is, so at the microscopic scale, yes, that is true. And that is an argument against eternalism. Is inbuilt to the physics of our universe, there is randomness.
Mhm.
Now, again, at the macroscopic scale, that has such a tiny effect. But the problem is, we might be able to apply that with relative certainty, with inanimate objects and large objects. But when you get to the level of, this is where free will comes in. When you get to the level of trying to do that with something like neurons in the brain, where these things are small enough to be affected by quantum effects and this quantum randomness that happens,
Yeah.
that that's where it's like, okay, maybe we wouldn't be able to predict the future with 100% certainty, is because there's some randomness.
Right.
So that's
Which is
some
which is why I was like, wait a minute.
right. That's an argument against eternalism. But what it doesn't reconcile is, so I won't get to that, but so one way this has been reconciled is what's called the growing block theory, where
Mm.
the block the past does exist and has existed, but the future does not. The future, the block is growing, and the block is, because of relativity, this has to be the case. The block is not sort of flat
Right.
and doesn't have one slice of the now, but the now is a sort of bumpy surface depending on where you are at in space. So the we tried. There is an argument against this, and it has to do with how time works in relativity and how somehow, because of how time slices work relative to you, the time dilation amount gets greater and greater the further away from your point in space you are. So there is an argument of, pretend there's an alien like in a galaxy far, far away. Their time slice could be significantly in our future, and that's their present. The problem is that as soon as they try to communicate information, they are now restricted to the speed of light, which would take probably hundreds of thousands of years to get to us.
Right.
While their time slice doesn't, it doesn't, um, it's not constrained by something like that. But the problem was, we don't really know how time slices work, and we talked about this a little bit in the car ride the other day. But so I can't. Unfortunately, I'm not smart enough to articulate that argument um, against the growing block theory. But yeah, so that's eternalism.
It's very interesting. It's like I said, it's very counter to what you experience on a personal basis.
Just as the way it feels.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's the whole thing about this thing, is that it is so rooted on the fact that, well, relativity. It's so rooted on the fact that motion and mass affects the way time warps around something,
Right.
um, to the point where it, at least in this growing block theory, it have to be true in some sense. So we talked about, maybe this is what you're alluding to with how do you how do we articulate this? But we had talked about the edge of the universe. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I was just mentioning.
Oh,
That we didn't understand. Well, we didn't understand how time slices in relativity work well enough, because this is an argument for eternalism, but against the growing block theory. It's for the full block theory, and it's again it.
right. Because we talked about this, and I think you were pretty cool with the full block.
Right.
And then
It made the most sense to me.
and then I said something. I don't remember what I said.
You brought something up in relation to how exactly does relativity elude that our future can be somebody else's present, and
Right, because I was talking about,
it's because of this time slices.
right. Well, it was also having to do with, if I'm going faster than you, and therefore I'm experiencing, how does that work? I'm experiencing time.
The way you would say it is, you wouldn't say I'm experiencing, because no matter what you're doing, you're experiencing 1 second per second.
Right.
So what you would say is, things relative to you are experiencing faster, are experiencing faster time according to you.
Right.
If you're moving, that is.
Right. And so what I said was, if I'm going fast and I'm experiencing my time at 1 second per second, but the world around me is then moving faster,
Yeah.
is moving
It's zipping
faster,
by.
is zipping by. And then but the argument that was made, either you made it or somebody else made it, was that if I were to then at that point try to talk to you stationary, it would be your future. that I would be speaking to because of the way time dilation
Not
works.
not necessarily. The How I would understand it is if you were going at 99% the speed of light and let's say running around me in circles
Yeah.
just so that you're local to my point in space and could still talk to me. Kind of. Let's say you were running at 99% the speed of light around me in circles and then tried to talk to me. What would happen for me is you would be nearly stationary
Mm. Yeah.
because yeah, so but for for me from your perspective, I probably would be dying soon of old age.
Right.
So a conversation would be pretty tough.
Right. And then, but that was the thing that we started
The
talking
problem
about.
is that the time dilation exacerbates across further points in space.
Mm-hmm.
So like just me doing this can affect,
Mm.
the other side of the galaxy by weeks just
Yeah.
by me moving like this.
And then if I didn't do that and you did do that and we tried to access the same point in time or same point in
Same point in
space,
space.
right?
Right. When my dilated time on the other side of the galaxy has been different from yours, if we both just teleported to that point in space, what would happen? What
Right.
would we be at the same point in space at different points in time? Because that would be freaking weird.
Yeah.
That's what we couldn't reconcile because that don't make
Yeah.
any sense.
Because I did talk to some people about that, and their whole thing was, well, when you stop your emotion, you if I moved at whatever speed, really any speed, because the effects that we're talking about,
Right.
and then you didn't, you and I are still relatively close, and then there, I guess maybe it was just a misunderstanding on their part, because they said if we were to travel to that point in space, it would be this, it would have to be the same thing because you and I are existing in the same slice of time.
Because then, yeah, you and I would be in the same, or at least immeasurably close slices of time.
But the theory was that the way
But we dilated that time by different amounts before
Right.
we went there.
But the only way to make it to where if that's not a problem, paradoxically, is if the fluctuation of time is local to yourself only and not to the edge of the universe. I think we talked a little bit about that.
But if the fluctuation of time is only local to yourself, then that would mean that nothing would happen at all if you ran around me at 99% the speed of light because it's only local to you.
or did we not talk about this? I thought we talked about how maybe I'm tripping. I remember us talking about how potentially time dilation could maybe potentially not be on so grand of a scale, and maybe it is somehow localized to not necessarily one's own mind or one's own perspective, but geographically localized in some way.
I don't
I don't remember where I heard
don't
that.
think that's the case because
That does. I will say that doesn't make a lot of sense to me in my mind, but I feel like I remember
because then you'd
reading
have
that.
to ask, well, what exactly is the local distance?
Right.
And does it depend on the mass? There's a lot of questions that would beg. But I have also heard Roger Penrose, who's a Nobel laureate in physics, say the same thing about how the fact that if he just started walking down the street, he would affect the other side of the galaxy by perhaps weeks or months.
Okay, so that is
somebody that has dedicated their life to this.
Gotcha.
Also said that.
So I was listening to a quack, but anyway, so so the paradox is on. Then
The paradox is on. If exactly,
there's no way to reconcile.
If someone has a better understanding of relativity and how time slices in time work, how, for example, like if this my hand is time.
Okay.
Time in a motionless observer.
Yeah.
So time in deep space. And then this is my now. This is my now. if I'm at the end of this phone, if I'm here,
Yeah.
if I start walking and my time dilates, so let's say this is Earth, this is where I'm walking, and this is the other side of the galaxy.
Yeah.
If I start walking and my slice of time dilates by a tiny bit, if where
Yeah.
I'm at, if it moves up, the dilation is very, very, very minimal, localized to me.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the galaxy, the dilation is, of course, much, much greater. So that's what a slice of time in space means and why it dilates so much more further away for so much less of the velocity equivalent close by. And that's what I was trying to more clearly demonstrate is time slices and why it's so much different further away. But what it doesn't do is reconcile if I dilated time by walking down the street and you did not right next to me, and then we both teleported to a very, 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 very far away point in space.
Right.
Right. Would we be at the same point in space at different points of time?
And
That's what I don't know.
the unfortunate thing is, as humans, we have gone to other planets and experience different people who have dilated time differently have gone to other
Right.
planets. But the problem is that we haven't gone far enough for it to make a difference.
Yeah.
Not even close.
We haven't gone far enough to make a difference, fast enough to make a difference, or to a body massive enough to make a difference. So I actually wrote some of this down. So how much gravity dilates time is like nothing, gravity or velocity. So the Earth compared to someone in deep space at rest, the Earth dilates time by about 0.0219 seconds per year compared to someone out in deep space. So someone on the Earth compared to someone not on the Earth,
Yeah.
and we're just going to assume that they're not next to any other massive bodies. The person on Earth is going to experience, well, they're going to experience the same, but from the guy looking down on Earth, Earth is going to be moving at 0.0219 seconds slower per year.
That's crazy.
So, and the Earth is huge.
Yeah.
And it doesn't basically do anything to time.
Mm.
But when you've got an atomic clock and we've got satellites in the sky that beam the time to our phones, it does make a difference because the satellites that are using the atomic clocks have to adjust their clocks to make it according to beam it correctly to the phones that are not up in space. So it's a real thing, and it's the reason we have satellite time. Now, that's how little mass dilates time. So Earth, even the sun, which is like 1,000,000+ times more massive, I mean, a couple of seconds per year, maybe dilated.
Yeah.
So in the Earth, the sun is mind-blowingly huge, and it's still tiny in a space astronomical sense. So velocity, if you go at 99% the speed of light, 99%, right? Every day that passes for you, the guy that's moving, about a week will pass for your surroundings.
Right.
So, and that's at 99% the speed of light. You're going real fast.
Yeah.
But it's only about a 1 day to a 1 week ratio.
I would have assumed it would have been longer. It would have been
right.
Like there would have been more of a dramatic effect.
So from 0 to 98% of the speed of light, you're going to notice a little bit, but you got to be going insanely fast for anything noticeable to happen.
Let's do some math. I'm curious.
Hold on. Hold that thought. Okay. We will do some math, but not after I spit some more math at you. So the speed of light is about 300,000 kilometers a second. I think it's 298,700 something. I think. So 99% the speed of light is 297,000 kilometers per second.
Right.
Per second, which is crazy.
Jeez.
So at 99.9999% the speed of light, which is 299,792 kilometers per second, which I think the speed of light is 299,793 kilometers per second. So at 1 kilometer per second slower than the speed of light, 99.9999%, every day that passes for you, just so just just guess. From 99% to 99.999%, it goes from 1 week for you is 7 days for your surroundings.
Yeah.
Guess what it is? One day for you is how much time do you think for your surroundings? At just a little bit faster.
I'm gonna throw out a year.
2 years.
Oh God,
2 years.
That is dramatic.
Exactly, but for not that much faster. You just
That's
went
crazy.
a little squeak faster, and it changed the dilation by an unbelievable amount. Now I've got even further. 99.9999999% the speed of light. So an even smaller increment, right?
Yeah.
Just squeak out just a tiny bit faster.
Okay.
Now guess. 1 day for you is how much for your surroundings?
5 years.
About 193.
Wow.
193 years.
Goodness.
So that goes to show you that from about 0 to a lot of percent, basically nothing happens. But from 99 to like just a tiny bit more percent, just the slightest change affects the dilation by unbelievable amounts. So
Interesting.
yeah, that's and I think the fastest thing ever recorded in human history is like, I don't even know, less than 5% of the speed of light. Probably. Like,
Yeah.
we are not even remotely close to even sending a grain of sand even close to the speed of light.
Yeah.
So it's not in the near future for us to actually be able to tangibly see the effects of time dilation. Not even close to our near future. Unless we somehow get to an unbelievable massive body like a neutron star or something. Yeah, that is how little time dilates in regards to mass or velocity. That's how unnoticeable it is.
That's crazy.
But the thing is, it still happens on a scale so small it's infinite. Because one atom is still dilating time compared to open space. So like, I mean, the amount of zeros of seconds per year that would be 0.0, like it would dilate time nothing. Basically, for any meaning of the word, nothing. But it's still happening. Like the time dilation is across all things for anything with mass, including a single atom. But yeah, so that's crazy.
That is fascinating.
I cut you off to say that.
Well, you kind of did the math for me, so that's fine. So the only thing, whenever I think of time dilation, I think of a specific song. Actually, there's a song by the band. I'm sure you heard of the band Queen, from the
once or twice,
from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But they did a song. It's just called 39, is the name of the song, and it's about time dilation. And in the song, this is why I always think of it. In the song, the story goes, in the year of 39, it doesn't matter which century it occurs in, just the year of 39 in that year. They say it's formulated like a ship out to sea, but it's clearly a spaceship. So they send up a spaceship, and in the song, the astronaut is gone a year, and it comes back and 100 years have passed. So I guess what I was curious about was the accuracy of that, but I suppose it could be accurate depending on what percentage of the speed of light you're actually moving at.
And that's why, and 99.99999 whatever, how many nines percent the speed of light you're at is the same thing as, like, if you're at the event horizon of a black hole. The event horizon is where the bending of space-time is so great that it requires more than the speed of light to escape the gravitational pull. This is one reason why black holes are so weird, is because theoretically, this works in the mathematics. If you were to exceed the speed of light, because at the speed of light, time stops, right?
Mm.
If you were to exceed the speed of light, time would start going the other way.
Right.
Now, this is why black holes are so weird, is because the equivalent of at the speed of light in velocity is at the event horizon of a black hole. That's
Mm.
the space-time bent equivalent of velocity. But it doesn't stop bending further once you go in. So like, does time start going the other way when you get in there? Like, what's going? That's one reason why black holes are so just mysterious. But because that's one thing. Just I'm slight tangent here. If you didn't know I like black holes, you're gonna find out. So even though you enter a region of space that is more bent than the amount of bending necessary to stop time, which would imply the reverse of time,
Mm.
because for you and your own perspective, you are not in motion, time doesn't stop doing anything. It's still
Yeah.
1 second per second. But let's say that if someone from the outside looking in could somehow see you, what would they see you going backwards in time? Like what
Yeah.
what
That wouldn't make any
It wouldn't
sense.
make any sense, right? That's super. Maybe, yeah. That that'd be some weirdness. So that's one reason why black holes are so mysterious. But yeah, the 99% velocity equivalent is the same thing as the being right next to the event horizon in space time bent terms of a
Yeah.
black hole. But
That's crazy.
that's crazy.
That's crazy. You know more about black holes than I do, but every time you talk about them, I'm just like, dang, that's a black hole.
That's a black. They don't stop being weird. They don't stop
Yeah.
being weird. Right. Because let's just theoretically say we could see inside of a black hole because time never stops going at 1 second per second for you, but you are in a region of space time that is so bent to imply time would start going backwards. Would an outside observer see you going backwards in time back to the event horizon? And then once you got to the event horizon, would you go forward and then backward again and then forward?
Just yo-yoing
Exactly.
back and forth.
But from your perspective, you never stopped going straight towards the singularity. Like,
What happens when you get to the
what happens
singularity?
exactly? What's at the
That's
singularity?
that's another one of them questions.
Right, when space time is just so even more bent that every law of physics starts breaking down.
Yeah.
Yeah, black holes, man, they're weird things. Them are.
And you wouldn't think you know, a lot of people know what a black hole is, but you wouldn't think it has any relation to time itself, but it
Exactly.
certainly does.
Exactly. One of the most interesting thing about black holes is how they affect time. And
Mhm.
like what's going on with that.
What's going on here?
But yeah, so in my opinion, I think that I certainly don't think that presentism is the right or correct theory of time. I just don't see a way to reconcile if a PhD philosopher's idea of reconciling presentism with relativity is making up a preferred frame of now that he has no evidence or justification to do. If that's a PhD philosopher's idea of reconciling presentism and relativity, then I know that I'm not going to think of anything better. So,
Yeah.
and I think that that's a stupid reconciliation. Like,
Yeah.
you're just making stuff up to make it work.
Right.
So, I don't think presentism is true. It's hard to say that the the block theory or eternalism is true, specifically because of what we know about quantum mechanics and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle.
Right.
Even though that might not have much of an effect on the macro scale, there are certainly like what I said with neurons. The neurons are small enough to be on a quantum sort of uncertainty scale. So like, can you really take this Laplace's demon, like knowing the position and velocity of a particle, and being able to predict the next moment? Can you really do that with something like a neuron?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's too small. As soon as you try to measure it, you're not going to know either its position, or try to measure its position, you're not going to know its velocity. So it's also hard to reconcile eternalism. But under relativity, it certainly makes more sense. The growing block theory.
That's what I was just gonna say. I was just gonna say when it came around to what I was thinking of everything presented, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
I think what it does is it acknowledges the future as something that is not in actuality predetermined. Like we can talk about determinism. We can talk about the way atoms move and stuff like that. But in a real, tangible sense, a lot of people, myself included, have a difficult time grappling with an actually real, present,
Right.
manifested future.
So just to eternalism would imply that something like super determinism
Yeah,
is true,
You- you-
which is determinism, but also applied to the quantum
yeah.
scale.
We're not talking about just we could get down to the quantum scale and predict the future with accuracy. It's saying the future is happening. It is
It is just as real as what
it is
we're
just
feeling
as
right
real
now.
as the present. It is just as real as the past, and that is where I get the hold up. I can get on board with the determinism train,
Right.
but we're talking a step above that, in my opinion.
Super determinism is something it's hard to get on board with that, and I sort of hope against it.
Yeah,
I don't really want something like super determinism.
that has some
to be
pretty damaging effects on culture, I would say.
Certainly.
But the growing block theory,
Exactly. The growing block theory.
what it does is it allows for future uncertainty while acknowledging the existence of the past and accounting for relativity.
Exactly. Accounting for people's futures and presents all being something different. So to me, something like the growing B theory, I think makes the most sense to me. Um, like I said, the predominant physicist view is of the full block theory of eternalism and all its glory. But so let me. I said I was gonna provide us a brief reconciliation of this. So in previous episodes, I talked about how any sort of omniscience, just automatically revokes the idea of something like free will.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, I'll get back to this. I'll come back to that. So omniscience revokes the idea of something like free will if we assume presentism. If we assume that the future does not exist or has yet to exist, but it's coming. Something like an omniscience would kind of throw that out the window.
Right.
Because if our future is already known, then that means our future is something that is determined. Therefore, there is no free will. That was my argument. And a genius commenter reconciled the B theory of time with this, the Blanc universe. Now, this requires some mental gymnastics, specifically for the religion's sake. But if we assume the block theory, where we don't say that what's in front of us is literally our future because it's already happened, right? Like the days ahead of us are something that has already been established. And this is how an omniscience can exist while free will can exist. Now, you might be saying, how can free will exist if the future days are already known? Well, you might say the same thing if the way I gave this example to make this make sense was the omniscience that created this block universe played the tape being the block. They played the tape, and now it's solidified. And now we are on the tape. So, another way to think about this is we've been talking about this a lot lately. If one of us just squeaked up, just really hugged up next to the event horizon of a black hole, 99 point a lot of nines percent the speed of light equivalent, and then the universe around us screamed by, and you experienced the heat death of the universe, but you captured all of that information, everything that happened, and then let's say you jump into a time machine and go back and then start viewing this. You know what's going to happen. But would you say free will isn't taking place? I would say free will is taking place. You just know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen in the future already did happen. It's not their future, quote unquote, anymore. It's already determined, so to speak.
Right.
But they're not. It doesn't mean that they're not playing out their free will. So that is the only way that I can imagine reconciling an omniscience with free will. And it's a very good way to do that, if you ask me, is you have to assume eternalism is true. Now, some people say that, let's say the growing block theory is true, is the correct theory. A lot of people take that to mean, okay, so free will is still an option. But let's get into why the growing block theory exists as a theory. It's because of quantum randomness. It means the future is undetermined. But what that doesn't mean is that you have free will. Because just because something is undetermined and it's random doesn't mean you get to control it.
Right.
In fact, the randomness necessitates that you have no control over it. If you could control it, it would not be random. So the growing block theory does not also allow for free will. The eternalism certainly doesn't, unless you throw away.
Well, I mean, in theory, it doesn't. I mean,
in theory,
you could have a growing block theory idea, and I would say subscribe to some form of free will, but it doesn't necessarily.
The growing block theory, sure.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Eternalism, it's off the table.
That's what I was saying. Eternalism, no shot. Unless you bring in an omniscience into this, which somehow played this tape already, or let the tape play out, and then now is watching the tape after it already played out. Also. Exactly, right. But we came up with that because that's the only way you can really reconcile an omniscience with free will. But yeah, under atheist eternalism, no chance free will exists. Growing block theory, I would also say no chance free will exists. Also, because I said, just because there is uncertainty in the future doesn't mean you have any free will to affect that uncertainty. And just because at a quantum level there is randomness, it is just that. It's random. You don't have control over that.
Random doesn't mean control, right?
Exactly. So relativity and its relation to presentism and eternalism, in my opinion, is basically just because relativity is unreconcilable unless you make shit up with presentism, and makes the most sense under eternalism or the growing block. I just see that as yet another argument to stack up evidence against us having free will. But, that's not what this podcast is about today.
No. And that's not to say, even though we're saying that growing block theory seems to be the most reasonable, at least in our estimation, that isn't to say that there isn't more to learn about what somebody who is, frankly, smarter than us might say on the subject of eternalism, because there is definitely more to that. There's definitely more about time dilation and the slice you occupy in the block,
Right.
and what that means for the future. So
Absolutely.
there is definitely room
There's
for
so like we said at the beginning, we narrowed our topic of time down to specifically the two most prominent theories, A theory and B theory, and then of course B theory's spin off of the growing block. We narrowed it down to just those for the sake of trying to be able to present a complete sort of presentation. And as we are continuing to find with things in relation to the philosophy of physics, we could have done all our research on just A theory or B theory, and we could fill up
Right.
an episode with how much information there is about these theories. We barely
especially
scraped the surface.
I would say
this.
especially B theory.
Especially B theory. Yeah, there's a lot to learn, a lot to speculate about, and a lot of philosophy that has been undergone by a lot of smart people.
Right.
So, yeah, if you're interested in either of these theories, I highly recommend the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. They have an article on what's called temporal consciousness, and how consciousness relates to temporality, which is just a fancy word to say time. And several books from Sean Carroll. Sean Carroll is a astrophysicist, astrophysicist.
That's the one.
But also knows a lot about theoretical physics and quantum theory and the philosophy of time, and has written a couple books about it. So I would recommend Sean Carroll's work. But let us know if you have an answer to that relativity astronomical distance time slice paradox that probably isn't a paradox and is instead probably a product of our lack of understanding of relativity. But if there's an answer, because it's a hard, I tried to find an answer, and it's a hard thing to Google. It's a hard thing to like specify what you're actually asking because of all the nuance with something like relativity and time.
And then also one last thing, we're gonna keep talking about stuff that big brain. So if you have any other ideas on what we could small brain talk about big brain topics, let us know in the comments, and
drop it.
We'll throw that on the list of really interesting subjects to talk about.
And we will talk to you in 2